Nolan McLean grinded through 7 innings. The Mets hit 5 home runs. And for the first time this season, they swept a series.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Finkelstein, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Brand new customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets. Head over to FanDuel.com to get started. Now, there's a lot to talk about from the Mets game on Thursday. The offense had an outburst that was just so much fun to watch. 5 home runs hit, only struck out 2 times. That's unbelievable. But I want to start things off with Nolan McLean, because Nolan McLean did not have his best stuff. And I think the true hallmark of a great pitcher and a true ace is when you don't have it and you still are able to give your team exactly what they need. If a pitcher is not great and it's not their day, they don't have it, they're either going to give up a lot of runs, pitch deeper into the game, but they give up a bunch of runs, or they maybe are able to get through an inning or two and they get pulled early, or it's both. They pitch bad, they give a bunch of runs, and they get pulled early. The mark of a truly great pitcher is when you don't have it and you still find a way. Jacob deGrom, a lot of Mets fans will point out that even though the first start of his career in the postseason against the Dodgers, which was lights out, even though he was more dominant in that start, it was the second start in Game 5 of the NLDS against the Dodgers where deGrom didn't have it, and he still gave the Mets exactly what they needed, and that's the type of start that Nolan McLean had on Thursday. Does not have his best stuff, is really struggling with his command, particularly the command of his fastball, and yet found his way through 7 innings. After striking out Kevin McGonigal to open up the game, McLean walked Colt Keith. He then gave a base hit to Riley Green, gets a pop out, so he has a chance to get out of the inning, but you got 2 runners on, 2 outs, and instead he hangs a sweeper to Gage Workman, who hits a 3-run homer. When it's all said and done, he has a 24-pitch first inning, and there's 3 runs on the board for the Tigers. Now, in the second inning, he had a 7-pitch frame, 1-2-3 inning. He gave up a 2-out single to Riley Green in the third, but got through it unscathed. I believe that was a 15-pitch inning. And then you get to the 4th inning. Nolan McLean gives up a leadoff double, and then a single. Explain how he only threw 4 pitches. It is a riddle, but here's what happened. Gives up the double, then the base hit to left field. MJ Melendez throws out the runner at third. And if I was on camera, and I'm not, this is the last audio-only show, by the way, driving back from my vacation this afternoon. But when I put quotes on the throughout, because MJ Melendez did not really throw out the runner. I think the runner was safe, but the call on the field was runners out. They did a replay review. I guess they found it inconclusive. So the call on the field stood as was, and a double and a single turned into a man out at third base, a runner on first, and then McLean gets a double play ball to make the most out of that situation, and it's a 4-pitch inning. So that right there is how Nolan McLean goes from a 24-pitch first inning to be able to claw his way deeper and deeper into that game. Now, speaking of clawing your way back into a baseball game, that's what the Mets lineup does. After being put in that 3-0 hole, A.J. Ewing gets the Mets on the board with a monster home run, 110.5 miles per hour off the bat, 405-foot blast as A.J. Ewing turns on one and gives the Mets their first run. Then they tied up in the 4th inning. You had Brett Beatty hit a 2-run homer, driving in MJ Melendez, who walked. Now it's all even. In the 5th inning, Carson Benge gets a 1-out single. He steals second base. After Bichette struck out, Juan Soto gets a chance with a man on second, 2 outs, and he finally comes through in one of those spots, gets a base hit up the middle that drives in Benge. Mark Vientos then follows that up with a 2-run homer driving in Soto. All of a sudden, the Mets have flipped the game. They now have a 6-3 lead. Now, after they had tied the game in the 4th, Nolan McLean goes back out for the top of the 5th, immediately gives up a leadoff single. Then he was able to pick him off, which really helps because the next batter he walked. Then he gets Kevin McGonigal to rip a line drive, and fortunately, it's right at MJ Melendez. That point, he just needs one more out, gets a big strikeout to strand the runner. After getting the lead in the 5th inning, McLean goes back out. What does he do? Issues a leadoff walk. But he gets a pop-up, a strikeout, and a ground out, gets through that inning, again unscathed, stranding another runner. This is what we're talking about. He was not really comfortable almost all night, even in the 7th inning. At this point, staked to, what was it, a 7-3 lead, because after Vientos' home run in the 7th inning, the Mets got their next run. Marcus Semien drew a walk, went first to third on a base hit by A.J. Ewing, ripped a line drive at the middle. And then he scores on a safety squeeze by Hayden Sanger. The Mets playing a little bit of long ball. So at this point, 7-3 Mets. McLean hits the leadoff man, but he gets a slow roller, and then he finishes there with an exclamation point, picking up back-to-back strikeouts. And he walked off the mound with a roar. The most animation I think we've seen from Nolan McLean. I think it's because he knows how hard that was, how he didn't have his best stuff, and yet he goes through 7 innings. He allowed 6 hits, walked 3, hit a batter, struck out 7, but only gave up those 3 runs on that homer in the 1st. And even with that, he threw 93 pitches. So if the game was a little bit different, he might have even had an 8th inning in him, because he became that pitch efficient, because the guy has stuff that is that good that even when the location isn't right, he can find his way through a start. Unbelievably impressive. And then the Mets, to add the cherry on top, they tack on a couple more runs. Juan Soto hits a home run dead central in the 7th, and Marcus Semien hits home runs where he does, down the left field line, hits the foul pole, and that gave the Mets another run in the 8th. As I mentioned earlier, the Mets hit 5 home runs and they struck out only twice. That is only the 4th time in team history that's happened, courtesy of Mike Mayer of Metsmerized. Unbelievable game from the offense. Great start by Nolan McLean. Tobias Myers came out in the 8th inning, gives up a solo homer. That's all he would allow. And then Craig Kimbrell, who has plenty of experience finishing off games, comes out there in the 9th and gets the final 3 outs. This is a series that can absolutely be a turning point for the New York Mets. You finally get a sweep. You have the promotion of A.J. Ewing, which yields immediate results. You wanted a jolt. You got the jolt. And all of a sudden, this team is feeling themselves a little bit. They're playing some good baseball. And they got a chance here in a measuring stick series against the Yankees to be able to take this momentum they just got and hold on to it and maybe claw their way back to 500. In the next segment, though, I want to talk about this series being a turning point and why this team has a chance to really build off of this and turn their season around. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters. Every matchup is magnified. Every game can swing a series. And right now, new customers can bet just $5, and you're going to get $150 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. That's right. You turn $5 into $150 in bonus bets just for getting started. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups that are all there for you in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. And again, when you place that first $5 bet, if you win, you get $150 in bonus bets. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rocket Money. If you ever opened up your bank account and thought, where did all my money go? You're not alone. Keeping track of subscriptions, spending, and bills can get overwhelming fast. That's where Rocket Money comes in, helping you take control of your finances all in one place. Tracks all your subscriptions in one spot, helps you cancel the ones you don't need with just a few taps. It automatically categorizes your spending, so you can actually see where your money is going, and you can set budgets, get alerts, and stay on top of upcoming bills. With Rocket Money, you're just going to be able to look over everything. It makes everything feel more organized and gives you a clear picture of your finances day to day. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Watching on YouTube today, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, help us get closer to our next goal of 17,000 subscribers. Now, the New York Mets are playing good baseball in the month of May. They now have an 8-4 record this month, and they still have plenty of games to play to get back to 500, and this team feels different. Now, it could have been one series. It's 3 games against the Tigers. You cannot take too much from this one series alone. But when you look at this series and you remember how the Mets were playing baseball on the road trip, where they won the first 2 series and really should have won the final one against the Diamondbacks, but the offense went completely quiet in the final 2 games of that series, you realize that this team is in the game most nights. That's the first thing. When you have a team that has a good pitching staff, you are able to just hang in there. And then all it takes is a walk-off in extra innings where you had a fast guy make the final out of the 9th in A.J. Ewing, and all you needed is a base hit to win it, and Carson Benge delivered that base hit. Now, if Brooks Raley gave up a run in the top of the 10th inning of that game or gave up multiple runs, you probably lose that game. But because Brooks Raley was able to go out there and put up a 0, you had the ability to win that game with a run. And it's many more situations just like that. In 12 games in the month of May, the Mets have a 2.67 ERA, the second best in the National League. I believe it was the 4th best in all of baseball. So that's the first thing that the Mets have had, throughout points this season. But when they had their big losing streak, the pitching went away, because when a team is pressing that much, maybe everybody tries to do too much, including some of those high-leverage relievers who really went through it. And, of course, at the time, the Mets had 2/5 of their rotation. That was a complete question mark. Now you don't have that. You have the trio of Nolan McLean, Clay Holmes, and Freddie Peralta, which is as good of a trio as any team in baseball has. And then now you got Christian Scott and David Peterson with openers that have solidified this rotation and kept the Mets on solid ground in that regard. Then you have this lineup with the youth movement. Carson Benge has been on the team all year, but something about A.J. Ewing coming up, it all of a sudden makes Carson Benge no longer feel like he's the kid around, because that's A.J. Ewing. Now he's got a rookie, and he really just seems like he is playing with complete confidence, and not just because Ewing came up. This was building in recent weeks, and now he's in the leadoff spot. I think he's probably solidified that leadoff spot, although A.J. Ewing is coming for it. But for now, with Ewing still adjusting to the big leagues, having him bat 9th and having a double leadoff situation, that puts this lineup in a really good spot, because there should be plenty of traffic on the bases for Juan Soto. So you got Benge at a leadoff spot. Bichette can't be this bad forever. And if he can figure it out, all of a sudden that's a 1-2-3-4 with Benge, Bichette, Soto, Vientos that goes left, right, and really can do a lot of damage. And I will say, before we move off of Bichette and what he's given the Mets this season, I got to give him credit for 2 things. One, he's been available to this team, which not a lot of guys have been. And I can give the same credit to Marcus Semien. At least these guys are getting out in the field. And for Bichette, he's playing really solid defense at shortstop. And as much as you might criticize Bo Bichette right now, and rightfully so, imagine if you didn't have him and you had Lindor and Mauricio go down, and you had traded Jet Williams and Luis Angel Acuna to address your roster in other ways. The Mets would be in a bad spot. Would Vidal Brujan be the starting shortstop of the New York Mets? Maybe. As much as everyone's going to criticize Bichette for the lack of offensive production and for what he gets paid, you have to give him credit because he's a shortstop and he has played the position pretty well. He is still giving you some value. Now you get beyond that top four in the lineup, though. Again, Benge really starting to swing it well. Bichette, you're waiting on. Juan Soto has a big game. Hopefully that gets him on a roll a little bit. We know what he can do when he is clicking on all cylinders. He can absolutely carry a lineup. And Mark Vientos has been carrying the lineup a little bit. Hitting the ball hard, getting clutch RBIs, hitting home runs. He has been very solid and giving you now 4 hitters that I think you like at the top of your lineup. MJ Melendez batting 5th. He continues to be a surprise. But you could always put Brett Beatty up there because Brett Beatty seems to be turning a corner. And then you got A.J. Ewing, who in his first series, he became one of a list that's very elite, a small group of players who were 22 years old or younger, who had a home run, a triple, stole a base, and drew at least 4 walks in any 3-game span. Not even in just a single series. Any 3-game span in MLB history. This is another good stat, though. It's courtesy of Mike Mayer, who runs Mets Mirage. You can find him on X. Really great follow. He has that stat. Again, a list of players younger than 22 years old who homered, tripled, and stole a base while walking at least 4 times in any 3-game span. Not just their first 3, any 3-game span. You have A.J. Ewing, who did it. Jordan Walker has done it. Juan Soto, Ronald Acuna Jr., Delano DeShields, Eddie Matthews, Mickey Mantle, Whitey Lockman, and Ted Williams. That's a pretty elite group to be associated with. And that's A.J. Ewing right now. So when you have that top 4 of Benge, Bichette, Soto, and Vientos, you got a middle of the lineup that's going to include MJ Melendez and Brett Beatty against right-handed pitching. And then A.J. Ewing is at the bottom of your lineup, giving you that spark of a double leadoff. All of a sudden, you can stomach the defensive-minded Marcus Semien and Luis Trans because you got 7 real hitters in this lineup. And these are guys that still can help you. We've seen Luis Trans, shooting the ball the other way and getting a 2-out hit with a runner in scoring position. We saw Marcus Semien go yard in this game. Those guys can still be better, but they don't have to if the other 7 in this lineup are healthy and rolling the way that we've seen they can. Now, if the Mets had called up A.J. Ewing a week sooner, maybe they swept the Rockies. Maybe they win one of those final 2 games in Arizona. Instead, they dropped some games they could have won. An 8-4 record in May is really solid, but they could have easily been 10-2 or 9-3. Regardless, though, they're sitting 7 games under 500 on the season. And there's 16 games left to play in the month of May. They have 5 series left. If they won them all, because one of them is a 4-game set, they would go 11-5 in that 16-game span, and they would end the month of May with a 29-30 record. It's really solid, okay? It's all in front of you, but you got to keep on playing good baseball. The Mets have 2 series against the Marlins this month. Obviously, one on the road, one at home. They play the Nationals. They also play a Reds team that's been having a lot of struggles lately. So there is a lot of winnable series this month. The big measuring stick, though, is the New York Yankees. And that's who the New York Mets are facing next. I know the Yankees have not been playing great baseball over the last week, but it's still a team that could absolutely expose the issues this lineup still has. You got 2 lefties going. You got one of the best pitchers in baseball and the one right-hander the Mets are going to see with Cam Schlittler. So this is going to be a very tough series for the New York Mets, and we're going to talk about it in just a minute. Workplace chaos, deadlines that are stacking up, your inbox is overflowing. There's one position you had to fill, and it's sitting there open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is the job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. Instead, if you're hiring, you spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners to this show are going to get $75 in sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about our podcast on Indeed, that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Again, go to Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Now, the New York Yankees have not been playing the best baseball as of late. They've lost 5 of the last 6 games. They got swept by the Brewers, and they just got beaten by the Orioles. And both of those series took place on the road, which is important to note because the New York Yankees have been, I don't want to call them unbeatable, but they've been very good when playing at Yankee Stadium. They're 14-6 at home. They are 13-11 on the road. So it's good the Mets are seeing them on the road. Granted, they didn't have this recent stretch where they lost 5 out of 6 on the road. Their record will look a lot better than a 13-11 on the road. Instead, it would be 12-6. So this is a team that can beat you anywhere. And if you look at the pitching matchups of this series, again, this really is a measuring stick and a true test for the newfound Mets lineup. Because the first game, you got Cam Schlittler going. And this guy's been unbelievable this season. He has a 1.35 ERA, has a 0.81 whip, a 177 batting average against. That's through 9 starts. And the Yankees are 7-2 when Schlittler takes the mound. That is not going to be an easy guy for the Mets to get to. Then you have 2 left-handers, Carlos Rodon and Ryan Weathers. Rodon has only made 1 start this year. That came against the Brewers. He gave up 3 runs across 4 1/3 innings pitched. Meanwhile, Ryan Weathers has been very tough this year. He has an ERA of a flat 3. That's through 8 starts, 54 strikeouts and 45 innings pitched, and 1.11 whip. It's really solid. This is going to be a very tough test for this lineup because Schlittler is hard on anybody. And then you have a couple lefties, and the Mets' right-handed lineup to face left-handed pitching, it hasn't been good, but the good news now is you are going to start Carson, Benge. You are going to start A.J. Ewing, and maybe these guys can bring new life to your lineup. I think the Mets might start Brett Beatty as well against those lefties instead of Adel Brujan. It's going to make you a better defensive team, and I think you still have enough guys to be able to scratch some runs. So I'm excited to see what the Mets do against these pitchers that should do very well against the Mets. But honestly, sometimes we forecast a series and it's like, oh, this guy's a 6.5 ERA. This guy has a 9 ERA. This guy has a 5.4 ERA. The Mets should be able to score a ton of runs. And each of the pitchers that was supposed to be not the best is all of a sudden able to find it because it's the Mets and they're pitching in the 7th inning. It's a gem and you're in a bad spot. So I think the Mets right now don't even need to worry about who they're facing. They just have to control what they can control, give quality at bats, get traffic on the bases, utilize their speed once they're there to squeeze out as much run support as they can for a pitching staff that's been nails. And so because of how well they've pitched, they don't have to do too much. So no one should be getting outside of themselves. They need to just focus on what they can control and just avoid pressing, because pressing is what got the Mets in this hole. And they have to just get outside of that and just focus on each guy doing their job. And if they do that, they're going to be in a good spot. Now, to counter these starting pitchers for the Yankees, the Mets do have Clay Holmes going tonight. He has a 1.86 ERA on the season. So the right guys on the mound to try to match Cam Schlittler. Hopefully Holmes can get deep into the game. The Mets can scratch a couple runs, and they can find their way to a victory. Now, Carlos Rodon is likely going up against Huascar Brazoban at first, and then David Peterson will enter that game a little bit later on. So that's going to be one where it should be all hands on deck, and you might need to have a little bit extra in the holster going into it. So that's why going into this series, it's so important what Nolan McLean was able to do there, because he largely saved the bullpen. Yes, Tobias Myers and Craig Kimbrell each had a pitch an inning, but you stayed away from Devin Williams. You stayed away from Luke Weaver. You stayed away from Brooks Raley. You did a really good job of having that bullpen in the best possible position they needed to be to succeed in this upcoming series against the Yankees, where it's going to be imperative that you get really good pitching across the board. So I just think, again, McLean grinding through that start was so massive for this team, and now you go out there against the Yankees, you win a series, you're going to be feeling pretty incredible about yourself moving forward, and I hope that the Mets can hold on to this momentum, because it can be fleeting in this game. But they have some right now. They can grab onto it, reel off some more wins. It's just going to be so big for morale if they can keep this train on the tracks and they don't derail at all. Yes, you've had injuries. And quick notes there, Francisco Lindor, no real update as far as a timeline, but they are saying the calf is recovering and getting better, but no baseball activities or no ramp up at this time. So that is your one injury note. I'm trying to think if there was anything else today that came up. Off the top of my head, I cannot think of anything. But regardless, that is going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. I appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 17,000 subscribers.